I've just gone through the ground rules with both of you, and I'd like to get started now. Patrice, since you were the one who brought the case to my company, would you please start and let us know what your issues are and why we're here today?
Yes, thank you. So the main issue the main purpose for me coming to you is because Kelly owes me $5,000 for services that I provided to her. She had a 60th anniversary party. She held a 60th anniversary party for her parents at my hotel. A number of issues occurred that evening that made Kelly extremely unhappy, and I take responsibility for a lot of those. But at the same time, I feel that it's not. I don't want to take responsibility for all of them. In addition to her not wanting to pay me the $5,000, she's also threatened to tarnish my reputation by not just my reputation, but the reputation of the hotel. And as you know, it's a newer hotel for me. It's newer purchase, and there were a lot of issues in the past, and I would like to try to turn that around. And I feel that if she were to post anything negative on these social media sites, it would just ruin me. It would just ruin the growth of this hotel.
Okay. And so it sounds like what your issues are then is that Kelly owes you $5,000 that she has not paid yet, and you're afraid that she's going to ruin your reputation.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about what happened that night,
okay,
so that I can understand the issue better.
Okay.
From your point of view.
So there were a number of staffing issues that I was experiencing. On several different areas within the restaurant. Within the hotel. The restaurant was impacted. My main servers were out. Some of the staff that had been hired to work Kelly's party were out. Also, we were short-staffed for valet. That was a bone of contention for Kelly. But in addition to that, also the food, there were some issues with the food.
But don't you think with any staff, you should have that?
Kelly, do you mind, remember when we talked about before, if you have some issues, write them down, and then when it's your turn to talk, we can discuss them. Okay?
All right.
Okay?
Thanks so much.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about there were some issues with the food.
Okay, there were some issues with the food in that she had expected a certain layout of food, which we had agreed to, but Kelly had made some last-minute changes with regard to what food she wanted to be served. Also, in consideration for the age range of the guests that we were having, it's a larger room, we decided that based on the last-minute changes, we were going to set up stations. She was extremely unhappy with the stations that were set up. The last-minute changes that she made also caused us to incur significant fees because the food that we had prepared, she no longer wanted to have served. Okay. And so we wanted to make her happy, and as a result, we ended up making it worse. Okay. But still had incurred a large debt, or we incurred charges as a result of her last-minute changes. The valet. When she arrived, initially the valet was not up and running because the main manager of my valet was late to work that day. I grabbed Tony from the back, who had been off providing that service for me in the past. So he came up, and within 15 minutes, that was also rectified. However, in addition to that, we had reduced the valet charge per car significantly. We typically charge $18 to valet, and this day for Kelly we charged only $5 to valet. So that was one area where we had offered a significant discount. Also, when she had told us the number of people that were coming, we offered her a discount for that number of people, and so the number of people that actually showed up was plus 25 to what had originally been planned, which I believe was around 60 people to come. And so we ended up having 85 people. So we were scrambling at the last minute to make sure that everyone had something to eat. And so when the last minute changes happened, additional people came. It became more of even a more bigger issue for us to try to tackle.
Okay. So let me see if I understand correctly what you said. One of your main issues that day is, first of all, you said this is a very new hotel, so things are kind of just getting up and running. You said you had some staffing issues that night. There were people that either didn't show up or showed up late.
And they were main key players. They were people that were prepped for this event.
Okay. And you said that Kelly had made some last-minute food changes, which you weren't prepared for, and so you went through a significant fees in order to have new food, different type of food.
Yep.
Okay. Then you also said there was a valet issue, that the valet was supposed to start at a certain time, but the valet manager was late.
Yes, by about 15 minutes, and I think about three guests she may know that had shown up at that time and that were not able to have valet service.
Okay, but you're saying that that you normally charge $18 for valet, but you charged $5, and so you felt as though you'd given her a discount there already, and that there were 25 more guests than you had originally thought there were supposed to be.
And then I had forgotten to mention that as a result of those 25 guests coming, it wasn't just food, it was set up. We had to bring in two additional stations, as well as 4 new tables, because we seat 5 at a table. So it was a lot of moving around. And that same day, there was another event happening at the hotel, and I had staff running and myself running back and forth pretty much from both events to try to just keep them going.
And how much did you charge Kelly for the entire event?
I believe that the entire cost was around $22,000.
Okay, and so you had her pay most of that up front, and then she owes you $5,000.
Half was required up front, and then a week before the rest, and then we had agreed that she would provide me the final check that evening, and that evening she withheld the check. She did not pay me that night.
Okay, so how much does she owe you?
She owes me in total $5,000.
$5,000 more. Okay. So, Kelly, are these? Do you understand the issues that she has? You might not agree with them, but do you understand that these are her issues? Did you hear everything that she had to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I add one more thing?
Of course.
I don't know if you had just covered it, but the again, the social media. I can't stress enough how concerned I am that she is going to do that, because things that she had said that she was going to say would just really be bad.
Okay, understood. So you want $5,000 from her, and you want a guarantee from her that she will not post to social media.
Yes.
Okay. Kelly, would you like to take the opportunity now to give us your issues?
So first of all, I will not agree to pay $5,000 because 3 of the major services that we expected that night were not fulfilled in my eyes or in the eyes of the guests.
Were they never rectified? You don't believe that they were ever? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Patrice. Let's let her talk, and then if you have questions, you can ask her. You can write them down, okay?
Okay.
So let's start with the valet service. First of all, had Patrice been communicating all of this to me ongoing throughout the evening of the event, it might have been a lot better for me. But now that I'm realizing she was going between 2 events, half the time when I couldn't find her, I didn't know she was working another event at the hotel. I thought she was off. I didn't know where she was, frankly. So that's what started my upsetness with what was happening. And we'll start with the valets. First of all, Patrice and I had a discussion when we were setting everything up that because this is a 60th anniversary, old people get places early. They always get there 15 minutes, sometimes a half an hour. So I had asked for that valet to be there, not 15 minutes before the guy showed up, literally a half an hour before he showed up. And there were at least 7 to 8 elderly guests, and some of them had 2 or 3 people in their cars that literally had to go find parking around Beverly Hills, and that's virtually impossible. And some of them had walkers, 2 of them had canes. I mean, it was just a situation where that is not how I wanted the evening to start. two of those couples being my parents and their best friends. And of course, I'm expecting everything to just run smoothly the minute my parents get there, and it started out badly. So that was the first big issue. The second big issue, of course, was my shock with the change of how the food was being served. Patrice and I had discussed that we were going to have our salad was going to be set at our table, and then all the rest of the meal would be going from there, and it would be served to the guests. That the guests would not have to get up. I did not set up food stations. I agree that I made a semi-last minute change, but you did say that we could do changes up to 3 to 5 days in advance.
This was not 3 to 5 days in advance.
Okay. So I don't know what you're looking at, but it was basically probably 4 days in advance when I asked to have a combination of salmon and chicken served.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever happened with the salmon and chicken, we did get it, but it was served at stations. So these elderly people who have canes and walkers are now having to get their plates, and the wives are trying. Now, I will grant you that your staff was very good in helping some of these people get their meals, but there would have been no need for that had they all been served as I had designated. But because I couldn't find Patrice during this time that food was being served, there was, I guess, an assistant manager for catering was there, and at least she relegated somebody. But that person, literally, I kept saying, get Patrice for me, get Patrice for me. And he refused. He just basically ignored that request. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I don't, that this is getting me a little more angry as the night is going on, and I may have had a little bit of a meltdown at a couple of points on her staff. Mm-hmm. And I apologize for that because that is not what I wanted to happen. But when the third thing happened, and we had ordered a cake from a cake company, very reputable cake company who has dealt with her hotel before and actually gave us a good recommendation that they had always had good service, so I didn't think there'd be any issues. When the cake person got there, we have a 6-layer cake, 1 layer for every decade of my parents' marriage. And we had it a certain setup, so the cake people were coming. They were going to set it up in the room. And because the room wasn't ready for whatever reason, they were not allowed in the room. So the person from the bakery was trying to explain to the front office staff, who said that they couldn't get a hold of the person they needed to get a hold of. I don't know if that was Patrice or the catering manager, but they were not able to get the cake set up. So the baker was explaining to them how to do it. I go in and I see 5 tiers of the cake, but I don't see the 6th tier. And I don't know why it's set up the way it's set up. It was not at all the way. So now I'm calling the bakery thinking they set it up wrong, but not having any communication once again with the reason why there weren't 6 layers. He said, I delivered 6 layers. I was not allowed to go into the room to set it up. And that was it. I just blew my stack, because this is all before the majority of guests had gotten there. We had just a few guests that had arrived. Mm-hmm. So needless to say, that is not how I planned the event to go. Unfortunately, in certain respects, the guests didn't know what our plan was. But honestly, having that 6th tier missing and having no idea of what happened and why it happened just threw me over the top. And I realized that at that moment, I was not going to pay for the rest of this event, mm-hmm. because I didn't get the services that we had not only agreed on, but had discussed just a week prior. Mm-hmm. And then when she brings up the fact that it was supposed to be for 60 guests, I thought it was between 50 and 70 that we had agreed on, so that 25 extra guests really shouldn't have made. They should have, so maybe 5 extra guests out of the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But any event planner knows you always, mm-hmm. take that into account when you're planning, which they didn't. So mm-hmm. I don't know how she thinks, but again, there's no way I'm paying that extra $5,000 when those were big issues that never were handled.
Okay. So let me just make sure that reiterate what you've said so that I make sure I have an understanding, and then we can discuss it if you'd like to mention some things, Patrice.
I sure would.
It sounds like, well, definitely you've said you were not going to pay the $5,000. You believe that there were at least 3 things that were not done that you thought that you had agreed to, or that you had agreed to. And one was the valet, opening the valet early enough. One was the food was supposed to be served at the table by waiters, but instead it was a buffet. And
Stations, not even a buffet, not even one
I see,
long table.
stations.
Yes.
And you said that
It
there
was
was
like
some,
mini buffets.
and there were some elderly people that were not able to get to the tables. But at the same time, you said that she had some people that were helping.
Yes, and actually that was very appreciated.
Okay. And then you said that finally it was the cake. You ordered a special cake that had 6 tiers, but the cake only was presented with only 5 tiers.
And presented incorrectly.
And presented incorrectly.
Because the baker was not allowed to go in and set up, which we
Okay.
were told would definitely be allowed to happen.
Okay. And then it sounds like you were also upset because you couldn't locate Patrice during the evening. And were you
No communication.
were you under the impression that she was going to be there the whole time?
Well, I figured if she was making big changes like this, she would communicate those changes to me. I knew she said she would be available for us at the event.
Okay.
I wasn't necessarily sure she'd be available the entire night, but at least throughout the dinner.
Okay.
And when I couldn't find her and nobody else would get her for me, I started realizing I can't pay for services that I'm not really receiving.
I understand. Okay. Okay. So, Patrice, the issues that she's talking about, do you have any other things you want to say about these?
I would like to, I completely understand Kelly's frustration, and I can't go back and change that night for your parents. She's, her points are valid, but at the same time, there was a lot of, I think, wishy-washy communication with regard to her expectations and what we were agreeing upon. So maybe we can agree to disagree on those areas, but there were the last minute changes that happened were a huge impact to an already packed or short staff. Okay, and so I hadn't had an opportunity to mention with you the cake, but that was obvious. I take responsibility for what happened with the cake. Our baker, the head baker in our hotel, was not in that day, and so I had to ask one of my kitchen staff, who is not seasoned in how to set up cakes. She
was not a pastry chef for sure.
She's not a chef at all, and I needed to do what I needed to do to try to get the cake set up. And so, why the bakery was not allowed to come in, I cannot tell you. The host that was there for me that day has been let go. A lot of organizational changes are happening, and I just believe that it was just all bad timing with what's happening with the reorganization of my staff and my hotel.
Do you know what happened to the 6th piece of cake?
The gal.
It wasn't a piece. It was a whole.
It was the whole. It was the tier.
Whole
It was the tier on the
okay.
top.
It's a tier.
And again, I apologize. She ended up getting the last tier, but the gal that set the cake up thought of it as a wedding, and so for some reason she left that in the freezer as opposed to putting it on the cake so that Kelly could take it home. She thought that would be frozen and they would take it home with her. And so, again, it was a young kitchen assistant that I had to rely on to get that cake over there. And
so it sounds like what you're saying is this is a new hotel, you had new staff, and is it possible that you just were not prepared for the number of events you were holding that night?
Understaffed and
overbooked, overpromised maybe?
I don't want to say overpromised because had my staff shown up, I would have been able to deliver a lot better service. And also had the changes that she made to the head count and food not happened at such the last minute, those stations would not have been there. And also, I also want to say that as a result of my last minute staffing issues, had those stations not been there, no one would have been served food. And that would have been my responsibility irregardless. But at least at this point, what staff I did have was able to aid some of the less mobile. And the people that were able to move around faster were able to get to the stations. And to be honest with you, and I don't want to discount how you feel about the situation, but I had a lot of smiling faces in that room that night. I remember coming in. The one that was not smiling, which is the number one, was my customer, and I apologize. But your guests, I felt, didn't know as bad as how bad it really was, and I just wanted to add that perhaps it didn't come off as bad to your guests as it did for you. And again, I apologize, and I don't mean to discount how you felt about my service.
Had you just said that rather than at the end of the night when it was the only time that I could find you, and you handed me the rest of the bill with our agreement, had you said any of that? But I knew you were at your wit's end and I was at my wit's end, so I was not up for any discussion. I just knew that I was not going to be paying that $5,000 bill. But had you said that, I may have thought, all right, let's talk tomorrow. But then when I did contact you the next day, I didn't get a call back. Now, I grant that you may have been off that day because that was a Sunday, but I expected you to call me back by Monday. When you didn't, by 3:30 in the afternoon, I thought, okay, I'm not gonna do a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So is this maybe the first time that you've ever heard the first side of
Actually,
the
it is
story?
the first time
It
I've ever
is.
heard this part. So,
And how does that make you feel?
well, it gives me a little more understanding, first of all. I did know because the valet guys told me that they were a little short-staffed. And I will admit the staff you had there was very apologetic. And because I, of course, was on there, riding them because I couldn't find you or couldn't find the assistant manager. So they handled it very well. So I got to give you that. But nonetheless, there would have been no reason for anybody to have to be served had we had the original agreement. And my big thing was the fact that no communication, and by the cake, that was it. So
Okay.
actually, when I got the call from you about doing the mediation was really the first time I thought, well, finally you've taken a stand somehow. So
Mhm.
I think, because my lack of communication, I know I could have done a better job of communicating, and I think that I myself was overwhelmed by the number of issues, and I just couldn't believe that they were all
Mhm.
coming one after the next.
Mhm.
And because I lagged in contacting you, eventually she just basically stopped taking my calls, and so that's when I reached out.
and I will admit I did not want
Okay.
I thought that's it.
I love the fact that you two are talking right now, considering how you entered the room today. So this makes me very hopeful. This is why I love to mediate, by the way. So let me just kind of go over some of the things we've talked about to make sure I have them right, and then we'll kind of pick and choose what we want to negotiate. All right?
Okay.
Because hopefully we'll find a resolution to everything. We obviously can't go back and correct the night for your parents, or for
But
you.
she could compensate somehow.
Okay, well, we can talk about that. So, again,
And I'd like to. I'd like
Okay,
to. I
okay.
want to make it right.
okay. So again, Patrice's issues were she wants the $5,000 and she wants her reputation to be upheld. She feels as though that night was not representative of the work that
No,
she
agreed.
does in the work of her hotel.
What I expect, the service that I wanted you to receive. It's not.
And I will admit, the night that I told you that this is going to be all over social media about how upset I was, I did say that out of anger, and I have not done anything. But it didn't mean I
Okay.
definitely didn't want to.
Okay.
I know. I could sense that you were serious, and that scared the heck out of me.
Okay. And Kelly, your issues again are that you don't want to pay the $5,000 for a number of reasons: the valet service, the food, the way that the food was laid out, the fact that you had these elderly people coming and not being able to get to the food appropriately, and it sounds like one of the biggest things that you had were two things: the cake and the fact that you couldn't locate Patrice during that period of time.
That's exactly it.
And the fact that there's been a lack of communication since that time. Okay, so let's talk about let's talk about what we can do. Okay, so the $5,000, that's an issue. Patrice wants the $5,000 that was in the contract, and you are still saying you will not pay the $5,000. Patrice, can we have some movement here?
I mean, I know that there was a charge, additional charge incurred for the last minute changes with the food, which totaled, was
Well,
about,
you told me 2,200. Yeah.
okay, so yeah, it was around between 22 and 25, and that's fine. I would be willing to knock maybe half of that off, but that would be about it. I wouldn't want to go lower than
Okay.
$2,500.
Okay. So you would agree?
Because
Yeah.
even though those things were not as they were to be set up, they still were those. It was still utilized. The food was still eaten. All of it was still eaten, and I just feel like it would maybe be fair to take half of that responsibility on myself, and maybe for her to accept half the responsibility in those last minute changes were a really big impact to me and my team, and I was already half staffed. So
Kelly, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, knowing that you had agreed to all the changes ahead of time, I'm having a hard time paying anything, but I could say 2,500. I could understand. I could do that.
Okay.
But I would like to have a little time. At least I can't give it to you today.
okay.
But I mean, within the next week or two.
Okay. Well, the thing about it is that if we don't come to an agreement today, then the mediation is over. We don't have an agreement.
But if it is the 2,500, could we say it's to be? I mean,
How about
can I have a date to pay it by?
Of course.
how
Of
about
course.
July 1st?
Of course.
How about
Okay.
how about I'll give you a month?
That I could do. That I could do.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So you'll pay $2,500 by July 1st. Okay. Well, good. Okay.
And can I pay you in a credit card? I mean,
Whatever form of payment will work best for you. Or how about a cashier's check? Would that be okay?
yeah, because I would like to have some kind of notation of
Perfect.
a final transaction.
It's fine
So
with me.
I think it's better a cashier's check.
Okay. Great. Okay. So $2,500 that you will pay to Patrice by July 1st by cashier's check.
Okay.
Okay. And do you feel okay about this? You feel okay about
I
this?
actually do. I
Okay. Good.
frankly didn't think you'd take it down to that.
Okay.
Good.
So I'm
Good.
kind of
I'm
pleased.
glad.
Okay.
I'm glad you're pleased.
Okay. And then the next item that we have is your reputation. The fact and the social media. You had told her that you were going to place things on social media. Did you place anything on social media?
No, but I had my friends and I were ready to go because it was not going to. I'd put the word out, believe you me,
Okay.
about how upset I was about it. But
Okay.
my friends said they wouldn't do anything at all until I
Okay.
gave them the go.
Okay.
So already I feel as though, I mean, I know that by that event not going perfectly for you, that there's going to be word of mouth. Kelly's influential in the community. Her family is well known in the community. And I feel like the damage can be done verbally, but I would really like for her to agree to not put anything on any social media with regards to the event itself that from that night.
Can you agree to that, Kelly?
I can, but I would like my parents compensated somehow. There's a couple things.
Well, let's talk about this first. So
Okay.
the social media, are you okay with making an agreement that you will not put anything on social media about the events that took place?
Yes, I am, because at least we now have communication.
Okay.
Okay.
I want to offer you
Okay.
some compensation as well. I want to offer compensation so that you feel more comfortable with saying that you're not going to put that on social media. That's so important to me.
Okay.
I
well,
want to
let's-
make it up to them.
Okay.
And
okay.
that would be
So let's talk about that then. Let's talk about ways that you can make up to her. Let's talk about some suggestions, some ways we can do that. I know that you said it was your parents' 60th anniversary. I know that you were upset about it. I don't know if your parents noticed. Did your parents notice that things weren't going well?
Oh yes, because
they
my
did.
parents were supposed to stay at the hotel that night.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I live in the area, but my parents live a little farther
Okay.
away, and they did not
Okay.
want to stay by the end of the
Okay.
night.
Is there something that you would either like to ask for or that you would like to offer that could maybe change the perception of her parents, as well as maybe make them have a special...
Well, when I was attempting to make calls to Kelly and when she wasn't accepting my calls, I was actually willing to offer them a weekend stay at the hotel in the honeymoon suite, and I would also like to comp dinners that they have there, and any drinks that they have while they stay, as long as they would be willing to book that at least 3 months in advance. Then I would be happy to offer them, a really nice complimentary stay at the hotel, and really make sure that they're treated well from start to finish, valet from start to finish, and try to recreate a special evening.
I think that would be amazing. I mean, they would love that, and maybe sending it with a letter of apology for.
Done. Absolutely.
I mean, that would speak loudly to them.
If I'm not mistaken, I thought that I had my communications team send a letter of apology to you, but I will personally apologize to your parents as well as send a letter.
Yeah, I did get a letter of apology, but my parents did not.
Okay.
So that would mean a lot.
Okay. And I was also going to say, because I take it very seriously, the cake, that I would also contact that bakery and provide them with a cake for the two of them.
I can't believe I'm smiling, but
That's
yes.
sweet. That's very
I'm
nice.
a good person, and I really want.
Well,
I'm new to
and-
the area, and I want this to be.
I never didn't think you weren't a good person. It was just you were not a communicative person.
And I've
And that-
learned a lot from this.
And I have to, about my patience growing short and maybe snapping a little too quickly on certain respects. So.
Thank you.
Well, let me just make sure that I understand what we're going to be putting in the agreement, because the agreement is next. Okay. So what we're going to be putting in the agreement, that Kelly, you're agreeing to pay Patrice $2,500 by cashier's check no later than July 1st. Correct?
Exactly.
Okay. And you've further agreed not to place a rating or a review of her hotel on any website, social media, anything like that. And I can name some of those things, like Yelp, Hotels.com, TripAdvisor, those types of things. Now, because the other thing is, Patrice, you've agreed to reduce the balance owed from $5,000 to $2,500. You've also agreed to write an apology to Mr. and Mrs. Power. And when can they expect to receive that apology?
I will write that apology within the next 5 days, and then I
Okay.
will also, when they are coming to stay, I will personally organize and orchestrate the entire event so that when they come, I can apologize to them in person.
Okay, so
Yeah.
by July 1st, you'd have the apology sent to them.
Sure.
Maybe with an invitation to.
That's great to come
Okay.
back, and I can put.
That would be lovely.
I'll put a package together, and
Okay.
I'll send the package with the
That would
apology.
mean
Okay.
a lot to them.
Okay. And so you agreed that no later than July 1st, you're going to invite Mr. and Mrs. Power to reserve one complimentary weekend in the honeymoon suite. Okay, and that's going to include a comped food, comped alcohol,
Comp dinners
comped dinners,
and
comped
alcohol.
valet,
Mhm.
comped valet, and then even a cake.
Yeah.
That's very nice. That's very nice. And then you said that they need to reserve the weekend at least 3 months in advance? Okay. Okay, so we have that. All right. So that looks good. Now let me mention one thing. In mediation, when we have agreements, we can either do a binding agreement or a non-binding agreement. And I mentioned to you before that a non-binding agreement means that if something goes wrong, somebody doesn't do something, there's nothing you can do about it. My suggestion is that because this involves money and because it involves a promise of maintaining your reputation, that you both make this a binding agreement.
I would feel comfortable with a binding agreement.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would be okay with that.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and make this a binding agreement then, and that means that if you don't get your $2,500 and your parents don't get all of the amenities that Patrice has said that they would get, either one of you could take them to court and the other person to court, okay? And again, because this is, because you signed a confidentiality agreement and gave it to me, you can understand that I couldn't be called as a witness, okay? Just
But
want to make sure.
this agreement could be held.
Oh yes, this agreement
Okay.
will be legal. It will be legal and binding.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just make sure I have everything here. Okay, so, and the other thing is, this, I'm also going to be placing in the agreement a confidentiality clause that neither one of you can discuss what happened during this mediation with anyone, okay? And the reason for that is that protects both of you. That protects your reputation. It also protects your reputation. And I think it will make it so that in the future, if you ever want to work together again, it's just like starting over from scratch. So we're going to have a confidentiality.
I hope I have the opportunity.
Well, you may get the opportunity if they enjoy their stay too. So
Okay.
that
So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to write the agreement. And while I'm gone writing the agreement, if the two of you wouldn't mind completing an evaluation of the services that I provided you today, I would really appreciate it. And I will be back in about 2 seconds.
Okay. Thanks so much, Jerry.
yeah, thank you. I didn't think this would happen.
Me neither. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Patrice.
Okay. I'm a very fast typist.
Hi, look at you.
Okay,
It's the best service I've had.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read the agreement.
Okay.
And once I've read it, if you both agree to it, then we will, all of us will sign it. And then I'll take copies of it. This is dated June 25th, 2015. This agreement is entered into voluntarily by Kelly Sean Power and Patrice Kirsch, doing business as Casa Bello Patricia. Okay. The parties agree. Number one, all parties agree that everything said and everything written, except for paragraph 2 below, during this mediation will remain confidential, and that no party or representative of parties involved in this mediation will subpoena any staff person, records, or mediator in regard to this case for any purpose if there is a future legal proceeding. Number 2, all parties connected to this agreement agree that they intend that this agreement will be binding and enforceable at law and or admissible as evidence in any judicial or administrative proceeding. And then I'll need each of you to circle yes on this form, and then place your signatures next to that. And Patrice, you would circle yes, and then put your signature next to it. Okay. Number 3, all parties agree to return to mediation if changes occur with the agreement or if new disputes develop prior to initiating proceedings in a court of law. Is that amenable to you?
Yes.
I'd prefer
Okay.
that.
Okay. We agree to the following terms. Number 1, I, Kelly Sean Power, agree to pay $2,500 by cashier's check to Patrice Kirsch on July 1st, 2015. I, Kelly Sean Power, further agree not to place a rating or review of Casa Bello Patricia on any website or social media, including but not limited to Yelp, Hotels.com, TripAdvisor, AAA, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, etc. Okay. I, Patrice Kirsch, agree to reduce the balance owed by Kelly Sean Power from $5,000 to $2,500. I, Patrice Kirsch, further agree to send a written apology to Mr. and Mrs. Gerald Power no later than July 1st, 2015. I, Patrice Kirsch, also agree that no later than July 1st, 2015, I shall invite Mr. and Mrs. Power to reserve one complimentary weekend in the honeymoon suite, Friday night through Sunday morning at Casa Bello Patricia, with the stipulation that they reserve the weekend at least 3 months in advance. Included in this weekend will be complimentary valet, complimentary dinners, complimentary drinks, and a cake, complimentary cake. So basically a comped weekend.
Yep.
A wonderful new weekend. Okay.
Yep.
The parties intending to be legally bound have executed this agreement as of the date first written above. And Patrice, if you would sign first. And Kelly, if you would sign.
Do I need to date it too?
Yes, if you would date it as well, I'm sorry.
And we'll get a copy of this.
Yes, I'm going to
Okay.
make a copy for you right now. Did you finish your evaluation?
Yes, and
Okay.
thank you very much.
Okay.
Perfect service. Thank
You,
you
Okay.
so
you
much.
Let me
saved
get-
you saved me some money too. So
Let me
And you
let me-
saved me a customer.
let me-
that's right.
All right. Okay, so here's a copy for you and a
Thank
copy
you.
for you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that I'm thrilled that you both came to a meeting of the minds today. I mean, it started out sad for me because I could see that you both wanted to do something about it, but you both didn't know what to do. And I felt like this was a really good example of mediation at its best, and you did the work, and I basically just was the referee here. And so I want to thank both of you for choosing Simpson Associates, and I hope that you will utilize my services again if you ever need it. I hope that you both don't need it together on opposite sides of the table, but I really, really appreciate your having met with me, and I think that that is it.
Great.
Kelly?
Well, thank you. Thank you
Good.
for saving.
And thank you, Patrice.
Thank you.
And thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
And have your parents let them know that to look out for that invitation.